Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show, and I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. Today, we're talking about books that make you recognize your mindless behaviors. Oh, yeah, we're going to get deep into it with Beatrice. But first, really quick, I want to give a big shout out to Novelty Tins, who provide us with these gorgeous, wonderful tea tins. I know they look like books, but they're tea tins. They're amazing. I don't know if you like tea as much as I do, Beatrice, but
I do love tea.
These are so cool. I love these. So everybody,
what tea is that?
Yeah. Check them out. They're at noveltytins.com. And in addition to the big bookish tea tins, they also have smaller ones like this. I don't know if you can see that. I know the lighting's a little harsh. Mm-hmm. It's Pride and Peppermint. Isn't that adorable? Mm-hmm. But anyway, okay, Beatrice, oh my goodness, we're going to have a good conversation. I mean, we all have these mindless behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. They hold us back professionally, personally, and then we sit there and wonder why we get stuck and we can't move forward. We wear these masks to hide behind, and we just keep doing what we were taught, probably incorrectly, back in grade school. And so many people are just frustrated. They keep repeating the same patterns, not knowing why they're not getting where they want to be in life. So Beatrice is going to talk about, in her very direct and no-nonsense approach, which I love and appreciate, the reality of what is holding people back and blocking them from their professional and personal lives. She is the founder of Mirror Inc., as well as the author of Mindless Behaviors, Breaking Through Unseen Barriers. Beatrice, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're going to have fun. Okay, I got to start with just the big question. What are mindless behaviors?
Okay. Mindless behaviors are unconscious bias and behavior patterns that literally we're unaware of, that keeps us stuck in our lives. And there are two types. The way I describe it in the book is more of like through storytelling is more of like micro issues of oppression. I always say that. They're like daily habits, like the mask we wear, the different, the way we walk through different settings, feeling that we need to have faces or do things that other people do. And it really stems from us being conditioned from a young age, steeped with a lot of biases from our social environments, from our culture, the traditions, and even a lot of the experiences that we pick up along the way. And one of the biggest things is that we tend not to overlook them because they're blind spots that we don't even realize we're doing. So through storytelling, I really unravel a lot of these behaviors and make them really huge. Like it's almost like putting a microscope on the stories and on the behaviors and really unraveling them and then making people aware. So.
Yeah. And I'm going to key in on something, because the whole idea, or the reason that we're not aware of them, that's why they're called mindless behaviors, is it's almost like we've been conditioned over time to not recognize them. And then by spotlighting them the way you do, it's almost like people have this aha moment when reading your books, like now it all makes sense. Do you get a lot of feedback to that effect?
I do get a lot of feedback. And one of the biggest things is I didn't know that I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And when somebody is, the beauty of awareness is once somebody pointed out, you can't really you can't unlearn it. You can't unsee it. It's almost there. Right. And then you want to become really aware of it for the next situation. If the next situation happened like that, it kind of, you have to retrain your brain and unlearn it. So.
Yeah. And I definitely want to get into, that feeling and what happens once we recognize them and we get beyond that. But first, let's talk about, how do we recognize them? How do we see them within ourselves? How does that work?
Some of the things that you do recognize them is just really stepping back and reflecting. So for example, the mask we wear. We have many faces on a regular basis, so that we wear. Some people can come with their authentic self, but a lot of us don't even know that we're wearing them, right? So we go to, let's say, for example, we go to corporate, we have to be polished. We have to like have this serious face on, and like we have to act a certain way to get certain things or even be likable. And then you come around your friends, you're free, you're outgoing, you're like, I want to be like this forever. And like you in that present moment. And then you go around your family and your family, you're like, why do you want to even know? You're like closed off and like quiet, and you wanted them to know just a little bit, just to not have those judgments. So we're constantly moving from one state to the next over and over again. And that's one way you can recognize it, is like, okay, how am I really acting at work versus around my family versus around my friends? So I hear people get caught up in like, well, what I say, how I act at work is so different from how I act at home. And I'm like, why? And then what does that mean? So just to even start with those bases will even bring up like that awareness, and you start to basically, I get it. Ooh, that's making me tired. You see it. So you start to pinpoint it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the thing is in your book too, it's told through many stories as examples, and I believe you changed probably some of the names and exact details, but you bring to mind one of the very first stories about the senator, right? Because that's the classic example of somebody who's putting on this face in public and basically just said, I've had enough, because it's exhausting switching these faces, isn't it?
It is. And it's really about like being in like this condition and self-abandonment. And like our systems are caught up of like what it's all based on a perception of how somebody perceive you. But you're not really understanding like, well, what do I really want? Mm-hmm. What do I want for myself? How do I want to be perceived? What is the risk if I'm not doing that? And it doesn't really kick in until you start to get older. And like in that when you're younger, you're like, oh my God, I'm trying to suck everything up, and I am going to be every type of mass possible. And then when you hit a certain age, this is where I call the slave game. You hit a certain age, you're like, no, I got to conform. Okay, what I gotta do now? All right, you're telling me I gotta do that? Okay, I'm gonna do that, right? And then when you get to a certain age, then you go another level. You're like, I don't care. I'm gonna say anything on my mind. I might be lost, but I really don't care. And then you notice that your life was all about everything else, but not you.
And that's that reactive state.
That is the constant reactivity. So we're constantly reacting to our environment and not really stepping back and reflecting and even understanding and processing where we came from along the way. And I feel like I know for me, when I was writing a story, it's almost like they're part of my memories, but I was just like, I can see the scene happen right in front of me and can pinpoint the behaviors and how and why it manifests the way it does. Because if we can catch it, how powerful can our lives become? We know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that's absolutely where I want to go. First, can you talk about the invisible book? What is that?
My favorite thing. So I cover this in the book. We all got injected into a slave game, but it's very unconscious. And we were handed an invisible book. The book has a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, and it actually really almost lay out your life in this, how you should act, how you socially should be, and even how you should do things, or how you should even be in relationships, right? So that's where we have the how-to books and the self-help and everything like that. So as you start reading the book, you when we are born, we're born into a family. We have all these values. And then as we of course, we had to keep reading this manual that we unconsciously reading, those are the behaviors. Those are the things that we observe in our mind. We get to the teenage years. Now, we all been teenagers. Maybe some of us that are they're listening. They're in that state. They're like, we're lost. We're like, we don't know what to do. They say act this way, but then I really want to act this way. So then that rebel come in, right? Then you get into our 20s. Then the 20s is all about, let's have fun, let's party and everything like that. And towards your 20s, you're like, oh, wait, what did I do with my life? Let me go get that book again. Let me keep reading. Right? And then you get into your 30s and you're like, I really need to get you and I need to get married. I need to have kids. I need to get all of this together right now. And boom, then you have this whole working relationship, and then you retire and die. And then the cycle happens again. Yeah. But along the way, you keep on reading that book. You're reading that book that was created by everybody else but you. You weren't writing your story. You're writing the perception, the projected story of what people want and that expectation from you.
And that is the key right there. Can you talk about why it is just so hard to overcome these mindless behaviors, and a bit about unpacking blame versus accountability?
It's really hard because sometimes we don't want to see the smoking mirrors. They're not clear, and we are comfortable. So it's easier to put the blame on everyone else and not really see it from the stance of, oh, I might be the one being toxic in this, right? And they're always say there are people out there, and this is like, oh, I'm canceling this person. I'm going to cut off the toxicity, right? But the thing is the relationship is natural. It's neutral. And if you think about when two people come in, and the toxicity is the behaviors within it, right? And the emotions, right? So it's not that the person is toxic. It's the interaction and the engagement and emotion that is between it that is toxic. And being able to decipher that is not what we were conditioned to do. We were conditioned to basically say, that person do it, that person did it, I didn't do it. Or if we really didn't do it, we didn't understand what part we playing it. And that's where the broken hearts come in. That's where a lot of the violence come in, or even leaders doing, saying things and doing different, say, well, that's that person's fault. Doing that is where that come in. And that leadership and that leaders do it a lot. And sometimes, most of the time, people mimic what they see. So if you have everybody doing it around you that are pointing a finger, you're not going to really take accountability for it. And then that's where the condition starts to be, it goes deeper and deeper. And that's when you start to know that it's harder to detect.
Yeah. And it seems like nowadays, I don't know if it's just because it's amplified because of the recent pandemic or the way society is evolving, but it seems like that blame game is so much more pronounced, or maybe I'm just recognizing it for the first time. I don't know.
I feel like the blame game has always been there. And all the dark, gushy gunk that we had in us is raised into the surface, because 2020 was that tipping point. 2020 vision, having that clarity, having that like being able to step back and reflect, and the world stopped, right? So now like there's this tipping point that you start to realize, oh wait, we're doing this. We're pointing at each other over and over again, and things that we really need to step back and really say, what part did we play in it? Where was my shortcoming? And how do I interact that basically caused this toxicity to happen? And that's where that training wasn't there. We weren't taught. We were not taught social connections or engagements in school. Let's role play. No, we weren't doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's such a great point. And I know a lot of what you're saying is based on, back when we were in grade school, what we were taught as children and how we were taught even just plays into this, setting us up for how we're reacting as adults nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit? One of the things that I love about your book and about you as a person is you are a professional. So it's you've done this with the professional entrepreneur, business owner mindset, but yet this impacts our lives personally as well. Can you talk about how, whether you're a professional or somebody who's seeking to uncover their mindless behaviors on their personal life, how your book can help people?
So I'm gonna bust one myth before I start. There's nothing, business and personal are one and the same thing. They weave in like a symphony. Mm-hmm. They're all like, it goes, it's smooth sailing and everything. I feel that it's two sides to one coin, and we need to be able to understand what really happens to you professionally affects your personal life, and what happens to you personally affects your professional life. It was never separate. And how I even approach my business is always been personal. We hired on personal. So I've always seen it in different perspectives, and I was able to say, well, as an entrepreneur, I am creating lifestyles, not careers. So this is a lifestyle for me. And my passion stems from when I was young. And then we grow into it, right? And then we become whatever we wanted to become, allegedly. And I always break it into the 24-hour day into 8 hours of work, 8 hours to play, and 8 hours to sleep. And I feel like we're imbalanced in that way. And when I started writing the book, I was working 90-hour weeks, trying to survive through, try to create relationships. Well, I'm in events, so it's the most social place to be, and integrated with business. This is how I can be able to articulate all of this. So I feel like, in a sense, there is for me as a business owner, I'm writing from a perspective of an entrepreneur, from a perspective of a professional, from a professional lens, but actually interweaving that personal touch. This is my dream, and I'm living it. And I'm asking people to do the same when they read the book. Let's look at it from a work-life balance. I talk about that as well in chapter 2, and how sometimes when we have that imbalance, it runs our lives and it can run into the ground. And so being able to have that balance and understanding it is actually my life's work. And that's what I'm doing.
And you're doing a magnificent job at it, might I add. So can you unpack some of the benefits? Like, once people recognize their mindless behaviors and they start seeing results, what are some of the results that people are seeing?
You start to thrive. You start to evolve. There's an evolutionary process to evolving. And then that compass in you start to activate. You guided by your intuition. You start to become more boundaries. Mm-hmm. You have those boundaries. You if you have to wear a mask, you're aware of the mask, or you take the mask off. And then like you understand the lessons behind it, and you hold yourself accountable. I always say, if something happened, it's my fault, to like get an understanding of like who's taking accountability. I have to take accountability for that action. So you as a person have to do that as well. And I feel like with reading that book, there is a level of balance, and there is a level of starting to do that. And once you have that passion and ignite it, and you start to, you're always going to have mindless behaviors. We are always going to go through these sessions. You're never overcoming this. Never. People say it's a lie if you say that you're I can overcome it, I can fight my demons. These always come up on a regular basis. So being able to just acknowledge it, say thank you for the lesson, have gratitude, and move to the next and move on. That's what
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the compass, and you give people an actual compass. Can you, why do you give people a compass, Beatrice?
The compass is the journey. It's all about the journey, not the destination. But the compass also represents the inner journey within you. So it's almost like that intuition and understanding that what you feel inside, how you feel it matters, and you are valuable. So that golden compass represents all of that. And it's creating that journey, creating that life for yourself that you want to live, and like retire the invisible book.
Now let's switch gears just a little bit, because we've mentioned the stories that are in here and how you constructed this book. I also know that this is not a self-help book. It will help you, but it's not constructed in that way. You've decided to tell these wonderful stories. Can you talk about how you're showing rather than telling through the actual stories in the book?
So, yes, I am a pattern person. I love patterns, and I don't want to give it away, but like the stories build on each other, and they're all separate, but the behaviors grow. It starts to get the smaller. So you start with the small. I started with the small one, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And as you read each chapter, it starts to be harder to unlearn those behaviors. And then at the end of your life, just like chaos. So I build it and constructed it that way is because we actually learn like that too. Mm-hmm. And there was I call people the what people. They tell you what to do. It sometimes tell you how to do it. Mm-hmm. They don't give you the why, and don't give you practical tips on how to even move forward, and like have suggestions, right? I don't want to give people a manual, which that's the reason why it's not a self-help book. Mm-hmm. And it's really taking the information, taking the stories, and really interpreting for your own self. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are some aspects that are relatable, and there's some aspects that are totally not relatable. But I can say that it could be a book of parables. And parables are meant to be metaphoric. If you do have an issue that you face in there, good luck. You can read it the way it is, and maybe those tips will help you. But it is taking that information, processing it, and applying it to your life. And I will never tell people what to do, but I will give you a starting point on how to unlearn them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure too, when you're working with people, you find that people are at different stages on their own personal path. So a story in there that might not resonate with them today might 5 years down the road as they get further along in their own journey. Yes. And that's why I appreciate the fact that you're not saying this is what you should do. This is your guidebook. This is your map, because everybody's path and journey, everybody's map, everybody's book, right, is different. Can you talk a little bit how you co-create with your clients? Because you are a businesswoman and you have clients and you can sell with them and you help people with your experiential events as well. Can you talk about co-creating with people?
I love co-creating. I always say humans, we're pat beans. We like to do things together, but we act like we don't want to do things together. So we have this little thing. So my whole business is about co-creating and being able to recognize the human in my clients, and they recognize the human in me. Mm-hmm. And then with that, we're creating this. And I am the guide. So I'm helping them unravel these behaviors. But it's an exchange because we're learning from each other, right? And not only that, I'm learning to be better in my practice, but they're learning to sharpen theirs and start to realize what their purpose is. And there's so much excitement when that starts to happen, because my clients light up a lot when they're like, oh my God, I discovered it from my own. And I understand what this looked like. I could see how we're creating this together, or like we're like planning it. So one of the biggest reasons why I don't do it for my clients is because it's not effective. It's always effective when it's co-created, and that creation process is more sustainable versus the Band-Aid of going to, oh, I think I know what you want, so I'm just going to take something off the shelf that I've done before and give you something that I think you do. I feel like that's going to fit you. And sometimes it's not cut and dry like that. So
yeah, that is such an incredibly intuitive and just the best way to do it, because you're right. It's not, everybody doesn't fit into a certain mold, so to speak. That cookie cutter approach, being able to customize it and co-create with your clients. I think that's awesome, Beatrice. Thank you for doing it that way. Okay, we're almost running up against the clock, but one of the things that I love to know from authors who write books, especially like this, what is it that you, Beatrice, discovered about yourself while you were writing it? As you're taking your author journey, what did Beatrice learn about Beatrice?
I've learned I'm a writer. Yeah. And more highly intuitive in storytelling and how I tell it. So I surprise myself. Sometimes I pick up my book and say, oh my God, I wrote this book. And I feel like I'm revealing that, like, this is where coming into yourself and that individuality and retiring the book comes in, because you start to discover where these many gifts that you do have that is holding within you. And that's what I discovered. Like, okay, I'm a writer, I can do this. So there's such a natural state of being through my process of writing the book. And I am very comfortable with that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And yeah, so many people, when they write that book, or that first book, especially when they transition from I want to be a writer to I am a writer, that's such a magical, wonderful thing. So congratulations on that. And thank you again for writing this amazing book. Highly recommend it. Beatrice Adenodi, can you tell people where they can go to find you online, find you on social media? Give us your details.
So yeah, I am on Instagram, Facebook. You can look me up at @BBWorld01 or Beatrice Adenodi. You can look me up on that. And Mindless Behaviors, I do have a Facebook as well for it, so they can follow me, and LinkedIn. So I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you want to chat and connect, and also to buy my book, you can go to www.mindless-behaviors.com.
Perfect. Beatrice, thank you so much for joining us today. I had a great time talking with you.
Yes. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. You bet. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Books That Make You show. You can find us on our website, booksthatmakeyou.com. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter so you never miss a show with wonderful authors like Beatrice. As well, we have lots of bookish prizes and fun stuff that we do. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.